Today we are headed to a house from Mad Men, specifically the house from the most recent season of Mad Men that is the whorehouse where little Dick Whitman, aka Don Draper, grew up. Now Ford, of course, is sponsoring Pop Pilgrims this season. We had some of their Ford Fiesta movement agents suggest locations.
When I had a chance to pick a show and be able to visit those spots, I didn't want to pick a cheesy show. I wanted to pick something that I know I follow, that is cool and sophisticated. Let's do Mad Men.
All right, I'm here with Aaron Levy, who's an Emmy-winning writer for Mad Men. This house played a huge role in the most recent season of Mad Men.
I think it's probably the first time the location was so symbolic of what happened in the season. It's where Dick Whitman basically grew up. It was a whorehouse. His mother took him there after his father died, and that sort of played out in the season. And the season was really about facing yourself.
Mr. Draper?
And I think, taking his kids to this house at the very end after Sally had caught him in a very bad predicament. That was part of that moment, was like facing himself by taking his children here and trying not to continue the bad behavior that he's been doing.
So, what do you think as a viewer, they can infer from looking at how Dick Whitman grew up in this place? What about him, about the real Dick Whitman / Don Draper?
I think what it's done is you've seen sort of the pathos of Don throughout the seasons. You see how he is constantly trying to escape through liquor or smoking or sex, and that's sort of the origin of it. His stepmother and living in this whorehouse, I think, created that type of person. Did
you sort of have it in, as y'all were planning it out, that it was going to be, you were going to sprinkle these flashbacks throughout the episodes, or how did it come together?
At the very beginning of the season, Matt actually came in with the idea that he was going to bring his kids to this house. So we knew that was the end game, and we also knew that because that was the end game, and eventually we had to show the exterior of the house so you could show the difference between the 30s and the 60s.
You mentioned that Matt had this idea for the end game. Is that how previous seasons have been, or how does it come together?
Yes, almost always Matt will come in with what he knows will be the end of Don's story. He'll know it for other characters too, and he'll come in and tell us at the beginning of the season, this is my idea for these different people, and we'll figure out character arcs and an arc for the business as well.
The verdict has been reached.
You've seen other times where Don is sort of trying to turn over a new leaf. How much do you think a guy like that can really change?
This moment where he takes his kids to the house was the biggest moment of change for him, and it was just a tidbit, so who knows what'll happen after that.
This is where I grew up.
That was huge for him to acknowledge who he is as a person and let his kids know, who know nothing about him.
Do you think we're gonna see this house again?
I cannot tell you, nor do I know, so.
Elaine, please shut the door and have a seat.
And why don't you talk about how you first started on the show?
Matt was my writing professor at USC. I was a screenwriting major, and he was working on The Sopranos at the time. We sort of kept in contact on and off, and third season he asked me to be the writer's assistant on the show. And then at the end of the season I got to write the finale with him, and then I got promoted to a writer.
It wasn't just any episode either. It was Shut the Door, Have a Seat, which was a pretty landmark episode in the whole series.
You have absolute authority to fire anyone. Fire us.
I got to write it because he knew my writing from the class, and throughout the season you have different chances to prove yourself, and he felt that I deserved a shot at it, I guess, and it worked out. For me, definitely.
And that was the finale that won the Emmy.
Yeah.
Which is that's a pretty good way to start.
I know, my first on-screen credit, it was pretty amazing.
This was a very scary place to see that Don Draper grew up. We saw a moment in terms of character development and the story that we hadn't seen before, and all happened right here.
And it was a pretty devastating final shot.
I know. They either end it on, I guess they never end Mad Men on a positive note. It's not like one of those cheery fairy tale stories. It's either confusing, odd, perplexing, or dark. And this was definitely, I think, a mixture of all of those things.